skill-based concept. We're very familiar with this concept in sports. That is the core of everything that we try to develop. Build your skills, build your talent, practice, practice, practice. These are all core areas of sports. Sorry, my mother's office was a great time. So she's interested as well. So this is a very important space. We're talking about this very core skill-based area and build it up. One of the main areas that we've learned, especially recently, that's really valuable in the learning process is the concept of gamification. This idea of building in tools and games that will help us learn. This is an entire area of research. We have researchers at UNLV who study the specifics. Go to conferences all over the world in both academia and industry to look at how to better gamify your learning experiences. And I don't go too into depth in that because that's basically what Bryan does. So I'll hand it to you in a second here. But as we continue going through this space, gamification often takes on different characteristics. And those characteristics, as they start to incorporate randomness, as they start to incorporate chance, that moves them closer and closer into a gambling type space. And depending where you go around the world, you're going to see different products, different games defined differently along that spectrum, simply based on how it's defined by that particular area. So we'll talk a little bit about how sports betting looks very different here in the state of Nevada compared to some other states in the U.S., compared to other jurisdictions around the world. And that's because we defined it in a particular way. It will be very different if you go to Washington State. It will be very different if you go to Singapore. It will be very different if you go to Germany. And even more fun along the way, it will change a little bit with time. Like right now, Germany is my last example. They're about to change the regulations about gambling in that country, as well as in various states within that country. So this idea really is a very concept. You can start with something that's completely skill-based, completely chance-based, and in between there's this massive gray area where different concepts of gaze and gambling will fall.
It's three-dimensional chess at the very least, because you've got 50 states, the federal government, and the Baltic Supreme Court who made the ruling, and then ultimately they interpret or intend to interpret. And then you got the international conventions. This is an example of Germany, but you've got the states within each of those countries as well. And the definition of gambling and gaming and other collateral issues change from time to time. Does that make it easier or harder for an entrepreneur who wants to assume some certainty as you grow and scale your business?
Certainty would be great in every jurisdiction, but you don't get that.
Right.
I think you look at every jurisdiction defines what gambling is differently. The one thing they do agree on is basically there is a skill-based exemption and there is a pure definition of what gambling is and what gaming is. And the two have, like I said, different vernaculars even, like if you're going to lay a wager or a bet on something, you're betting and it's considered gambling. In a skill-based exemption world where we live, it's considered a challenge fee and you can win a prize or reward. So we based 8 patents on that and have approvals for over 44 states to launch in under a skill-based exemption ruling.
Skill-based exemption is an interesting concept. I assume the definition of what skill-based is changes from state to state, or does it?
It does.
Yeah. And so you mentioned earlier about a California example. Tell people a little bit about, give us an example of what you mean by that.
Well, I mean, it's California alone. You're betting on someone to do something. You're betting on yourself to do something. One would be considered gambling. One would be considered skill-based. So like if you're betting on yourself to be able to accomplish something, that's basically you against yourself. That's your skills determining the outcome of the event. If someone else is betting on you, it's your actions that they're betting on, or two people's actions, that's considered betting. So when we do what we do, our patents and machine learning AI allows you to basically bet on yourself and your actions and your skills.
Interesting. This description is about as accurate and as detailed as you're going to get from anybody in the world, and yet there are still loopholes in areas where you're not certain and it's not clear. Back in the leather helmet days when I was trying to keep abreast of the law, remember we talked about what is a game of skill versus a game of chance lottery wise, and what do you do with that? And that's all evolved as well. And so how do you ultimately create a regulatory framework to deal with all of this? Do you take enlightened states and then exchange best practices, or it's just willy-nilly?
Both. It kind of depends on who's in charge and what they feel like doing that today. Some states have decided to emulate what other states have done, so there's some form of harmonization that you'll see with certain states. And when I say states, I mean U.S. states. They'll go for harmonization. I.e., EU member states. Some states have harmonization. There are collaborative groups that you'll see, typically regulatory agencies, that will try to work toward, if not harmonized regulation, in which you're actually getting those same regulations across, perhaps license recognition. So if I require a gambling license in Massachusetts, then the DAR will see that review and consider that without making it go through an entire license application. Because once you step into that gambling space, that immediately applies very significant, strict requirements for what the required is. So in this state, when Bryan talks about pretty much every state in the United States, when Bryan talks about having a skill gain exemption, that means he does not have to do how do you sound more very and I use curse word here.
It's fine.
Slow to speak. And don't use that word. So here's an example. So I'm gonna use Internet Me as an example. Who has seen the photograph of Margaret Townsend, programmer who helped send a man to the moon in the 60s? She's standing up next to a pile of paperwork this high, standing like this. Is this familiar? It's the code she wrote to send people to the moon. Right? Some nods. That's approximately how much paperwork you have to complete to get a gambling license in almost any jurisdiction. So having a form of harmonization or at least some recognition to be very safe means that you have a much easier time going from place to place. And we talk about these sorts of products, whether it's gambling, it's a helified game, some other form of game. These are things that aren't just right here, right? Like Rick and Bryan and I each put a fiver down about who will run around the pool the fastest. Either that I just learned that Bryan runs ultra marathons. I'm fairly sure we would be making the terrible bet. But that's not the way most gambling fees in general works. They're digitized. They cross borders without a care in the world about what that border is, a line in the map. So when we talk about all these various differences, it's very difficult for regulators to, one, bring together what they already see. Some will see what's there and say, it's not for us. We have very different cultural applications of this form of risk taking, so we're going to do something different. And at the same time, it doesn't matter in many cases. They then have to accommodate new changes in technology and new means of access to all of these things.
So give us an example of the massive paperwork you either got to go through or avoid, depending on whether. So the threshold is a GLI certification, or is there more than that as you apply to make your world easier or not?
For skill-based gaming, it's just like a normal business, but we've taken extra steps to validate, the integrity of our games. So GLI has certified that we do not have anything to do with the outcome of a game. We're only taking the data from it and proposing challenges based on the data we receive. So we've taken the extra steps to make sure that the integrity of the game is there and the security is there. What we haven't done is go through a regulatory process to get licensed in a gaming jurisdiction, because we don't want to be taxed like a gaming company. And that alone could set precedent. So if we went through Nevada, who requires skill-based gaming to be regulated, we'd be treated as a gaming company, a skill-based gaming company, but taxed as a gaming company, therefore possibly setting precedent for every other jurisdiction to possibly tax us like a gaming company. Right now, it's a normal tax, just like a regular business.
So for some who haven't studied the bios and the company, spend a minute talking about Evenplay, what you do, how you do it.
So just a little bit of my background. I brought Topgolf to Vegas, and when they first started, and we built what became kind of their flagship for the rest of the world. When I brought it to the Strip, MGM Caesars, they told me we're not putting a driving range on the Strip. What I had to do was convince them is this is the next form of entertainment. This is what people want out of home. They want experiences. They want sports. They want some place like the next Starbucks where they can do things. When we built it, I've tried to put in challenge bays, which were head to head. We put in a sports book, we put in slot route, testing what I thought could be the next form of gaming. What I watched when I sat there were people exchanging money all day long on creating their own games. So they had hockey teams there that were literally hitting the button as fast as they could for balls to come out and hitting it as fast as they could for a high point. So winner takes all scenarios. Um, I knew there was a demand for this, and when Callaway ended up buying us, because I was a partner in this local Topgolf here, my friend had written a patent on man versus machine wagering, which means for the first time ever, you can basically analyze someone's skill, offer them a specific challenge to their skill level, and allow them to wager or put a challenge fee towards that to win money back. So it's the first of its kind gaming vertical in which someone could actually bet against themselves. What's great about Evenplay is through AI machine learning, if my son's a 20 handicap and I'm a 10 handicap, he can play against me and still have an opportunity to win because his circles will be so much bigger than mine. If he hits, 2 good shots out of 5, he's got a chance of getting 800 points. And if I fluff it, I got 2, he wins the match. So it also sets the playing field. So future tournaments, if I wanted to have tournaments against myself and others, we can level set the entire playing field against me against Tiger Woods to be able to play and win. So the future, what I see in gaming is not just a slot machine pool. It could be something where there's a predictive hold through all the data we have that we could potentially hold about 10% over the course of, let's just say it's 1,000 challenges. So it becomes what I think is the next version of what slot machines entertainment are.
Next time you play him anything competitive, if he doesn't give you twice the space, you call me. I'm your lawyer. All right, just remember that. You call me. I'm your lawyer. So obviously, Bryan and his entrepreneurial spirit and vision are navigating a fairly complicated space to his visionary economic and business benefit. As the executive director of the UNLV International Gaming Institute, you see a lot of Bryans, but you see a lot of other folks who have taken different approaches to this whole world. Is there a template? What's the brand desire long term? Do you want to be the kind of good housekeeping seal of approval for all things gaming, or is that too aspirational or too soon?
I don't think that's too aspirational. It's just how an inspiration, but that definitely just the caption. The seal of Kimball, I just think that people would try and pay us killers.
Yes.
Like every other, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So with what we do, we study, educate, and innovate the space of gambling in the state. So this is pretty broad spectrum, same kind of spectrum that I talked about 18 minutes ago. And this broader space really is fascinating. What we do, we have an entire research arm, so we've got quite a few research projects across various applications of AI, of course, are everybody's favorite buzzword, the same power. I hear is big tomorrow morning. The sing being that you mentioned earlier told me fantastic. Everyone should check it out. Two subjects on harm prevention, of course, gambling and anything with risk incorporate space in which people might experience harm, whether that's as extreme as the gambling disorder or even just experiencing loss. That's a customer service project where you want someone to remain happy if they have lost someone. We have work that goes on, and there's education spaces who work with different regulators from all around the world to provide education courses on new subjects that you should up. We have a Center for Gaming Innovation, which builds games, sells IP. We have a few startups that have gold out of that, which is fantastic. If you are a student at UNLV or may in the future be a student or just feel like enrolling in a semester-long class, we offer that. It will be this fall. It's built around entrepreneurship. We also have a variety of other major educational too. So our major aspiration, if you will, is to be the place that is the area of expertise, providing red education, place where you could go, no matter what it is that you do, and we're just taking to learn more and build.
A political announcement and broadly defined, but there's no better program. It's just, and speaking of location, I assume the casino and the gambling industry are very supportive of your efforts.
Generally, yes. We really tried to build up a rapport. We've been around for 32 years now. And one of the most wonderful things, and this is a huge academic thing, that having these sorts of relationships need is that it's not just about providing advice, that it's also being able to provide criticism and have that received just as well as us.
Yeah, which is a great if you don't have the support of the casino industry in Las Vegas, you better go somewhere else. SOP would be the answer. So Bryan, talk a little. We talked about it before. The uh, the wall around Nevada. Explain that whole conversation we had earlier to the audience.
I'm not necessarily it's a wall. I think, Nevada needs to innovate a bit more in regards to their view on skill-based gaming versus what gambling is. As you know, daily fantasy sports is not in Nevada at this point. And to go through that paperwork stack, as she said, the F in paperwork stack is just not something a small company like mine could do. Nor could they be taxed like a gaming company. It just wouldn't work for us. So if there was a methodology in which some of these states like Nevada, who should be the leader, to look at things a little differently, innovators like us could grow more companies here.
Interesting. Your perspective on that same issue?
Sure. I think one of the most important things to recognize, and this has been really common, especially as sports betting has grown within America as a whole, because we're talking about this growth since 2018, for those who aren't familiar, it's in court overture, passed by the Professional Protection Act, which allowed states around the U.S. to introduce betting laws. That's what it's to do. And now we have it's 37 plus the District of Columbia, possibly 38 if Missouri actually moves. And states where previously we had four, three of whom didn't really do much, and the last one was Nevada. So this growth has been pretty astronomical. And the thing to remember with any sort of government agency, so of course we'll include gambling regulators as well in that, is that they move slowly. And they move even more slowly if they have decades and decades and decades of pre-existing law and bureaucracy that already exists. I know I get at least one hand accept this. At least one person proof. Does anybody know the last time that I has legalized gambling 3 times? Has it also banned it twice before the last time? How long has gambling currently been legal in Nevada? What year did person is I that's it. I'm gonna pretend. Here a number. I'll say it out loud in a second.
Yeah, there you go. Good answer.
19.
31.
Yes, 1931. Mike, fantastic. I'm so glad to remember my lecture. That's the lesson that
Was that a depression-oriented move?
So generally the way it's gone is we legalize it because it seemed like the thing to do, kind of a Wild West type thing. It was a big scandal. We said, oh, when then we damned it. And we legalized again. Scandal. Oh. Well, and then, we damned it again, and here we are. Somewhat related, certainly, to the Great Depression, but also just with general, while since the scandal, that seemed like the type of thing we wanted to do. It was already happening anyway.
And oh, by the way, you get a lot of revenue. So it obviously is a big deal.